The purpose of art is watching the dust of daily life off our souls. Pablo Picasso. Hey hustlers, welcome to another episode of the Hustle Show. This is episode 15. I'm so excited to have you here. I'm very grateful that you're joining us today. And today we have an amazing story of Ryan McCarthy, where he is one of the founders. He's one of the two founders of Culture of Good. Ryan's, as you're gonna listen to his story, Ryan's background, he comes from being a pastor and getting into a new evolution and a new mix of developing this new culture for profit businesses to give them a soul and to make them think like, for the employees and for their team, and to create this culture around the for-profit business to think like a nonprofit and to give the employees and the team a purpose on life, right? So, it's an amazing story today. I hope you listen to it all the way through, because even at the end, he shares amazing insights and he truly shares the hustler stories that we're always looking for to share with you. So I'm super excited to share it with you today. And remember that all the show notes for this and every episode, you can find them at thehustleshow.co/THS15. In here, you'll find the link to connect with Ryan and to find out more about everything that he talks about on today's episode. Just go follow him on social media. He's doing great things out there with a lot of meaning and with all of purpose, which is something that we need to always keep in mind, because when we go for profit, sometimes we tend to forget the purpose and we tend to forget the why, right? So it's very important to hear today's episode as we can finally figure out a way to combine the what with the why. And Ryan is going to share everything with you. And before we jump in the call with Ryan, make sure that you hit that subscribe button right now. Right now is the perfect moment to do so. For a couple of reasons. So the first one is you will be helping a lot of people find our show, right? Because when you hit the subscribe button, iTunes and YouTube, you might be watching these on our YouTube channel, or you might be listening on the go on our podcast audio experience. But when you hit the subscribe button and you leave a comment or leave a review, iTunes and YouTube give us more credibility. So they start recommending us to other people. So more people is going to find out more about the Hustle Show. And you're going to be helping me spread the message out, all the motivational stories that I'm trying to put out, and all the entrepreneurial journeys that we're sharing. So it'll mean the world to me if you hit the subscribe button right now. Plus, you will get notified every time that a new episode goes live. That way you don't miss any other episodes moving forward, okay? So without further ado, let's jump in the call with Ryan McCarthy from cultureofgood.com. All right, hustlers. So in today's episode, we have Ryan McCarthy. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks. I really appreciate you having me on the Hustle Show.
Yes, we're very excited. I know you're doing some really, really fun stuff out there, and you're basically turning the for-profit businesses into giving them a soul and doing great things for them. Make them think like a nonprofit, which is awesome. When I heard your story, it's like, got to get Ryan on the show because hustlers need to listen to this story.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's one of those things that became very natural for me because I didn't know any better. So I grew up in the nonprofit sector of organizational life. So my parents were highly involved in the church and missional work. And so I had always done that type of philanthropy and just giving back and doing good, and really grew up with the understanding that that's really what life should be about. And so I embarked on that same type of life and really just threw myself into giving back and doing good and going onto the streets of Brooklyn, New York and Indianapolis, Indiana, and working with families in urban America and just really had that as what I felt like I was going to do the rest of my life. And eventually that led me to starting a community of faith, a church in my hometown where I was born, in a small town of Marion, Indiana. And just, again, it was all about, like, how are we impacting the world with our lives? How are we doing meaningful work? How are we doing this life in a way that matters, right? Leaving a legacy, doing good. And so when I met Scott, who he and I are business partners at the Culture of Good, he had grown up in the for-profit sector of business and had given back and done those type of things, but it really wasn't his entire life. And so it was this weird, like, collision of me in the nonprofit sector and Scott in the for-profit sector, like colliding together with this idea of what if this could work in conjunction together, and can we teach for-profit companies how to operate, like you said, with the soul of a nonprofit? And so for me, it was more like this, just natural is what I had always done. I didn't realize, like, I guess I lived in this bubble of always being out there doing that type of work. And so I had never been in for-profit business at all. And so I just took all that I had learned throughout my life and just brought it into his company. And that's kind of how it kicked off.
That's an amazing story, and it's a very interesting fusion because you're right on that. I mean, people go either for the nonprofit or for the for-profit, but it's weird to see that combination, which is exactly what Culture of Good does and what they teach and what they preach. So, I want to dig in a little bit. I know you have you were a pastor, right? You started as a pastor with your church. So how was that transition from being a pastor into now, one of the founders of Culture of Good? How was that transition like?
Yeah, it was really funny because Scott came in on a Sunday morning when I was speaking, and even though I was a pastor, I wasn't real preachy. So not your typical like fire and brimstone, judgmental type stuff. It was more about that Sunday. I was talking about your why equaling your what, and waking up every day, not just knowing what you have to do in life, but knowing why you do what you do. And I didn't know that the owner of Verizon's largest retailer was sitting out in the crowd at that time. I didn't know anything about Scott. But after I talked about that message about living with a why that equals your what, he asked me to come out to lunch, and he's like, hey, if I can get free advice from this pastor, then I'm all for it. And so he started, asking me, how do I bring this into my company? I've got over 2,000 employees, and I was blown away at the fact that he had a company that large at that time, which it's grown since. But I had no idea, like I said, who he was. And so he was like, you know what, let's figure out ways that I could bring this into my company. And he wanted free advice. And so my advice to him, without me thinking about it or talking to my wife about it or anything, I quickly said, here's my advice. He said, what? I said, hire me. And
that's cool, man. I love it.
It just came out,
Yeah.
And I thought, there's an opportunity here. He saw it as an opportunity to hire me, to bring that message into his company, to engage his employees on a level that most companies never ever get to, right? This is more than like a reward and recognition system or something. I mean, this is engaging people on a soul level where they feel it and they believe it. And I saw it as an opportunity to grow my influence and impact more people for doing good in the world. And that's really what I felt like my life calling is just inspiring people to live a life that matters and do good with what you've been given. And so I saw it as an opportunity. He saw it as an opportunity. And so initially, his answer was, what will your other boss think about that? And he was he was pointing up, like the man upstairs, what's he going to think about it? And we laughed about it. And several months went by before I was actually hired on. In that kind of interim time, Scott was outside with his son his 5-year-old son, and slipped on a skateboard and hit the back of his head, and had 3 skull fractures, internal bleeding, had to be lifelined, was almost died. And so the conversation we had over lunch before all of that took place, aside from me just saying you should hire me, was the question that I asked him, and that was, Scott, I know you have a lot of employees. I know that now I know that you have all these stores, but why? Like, what's your legacy? What are you going to do in life that matters more than this? I just built this big company. And when he had a near death experience, and I think that really, you know, kind of rocked his world a little bit. It really did. And it was from in the middle of his recovery from a brain injury that he hired me. So I don't know if that had anything to do with him hiring me or not. All of his staff had to do everything had to do with him having a brain injury, actually hiring a pastor to come into a company. But yeah, I started off February of 2013 as bivocational. So my wife and I still ran the church, and then I worked Monday through Thursday at TCC, the cellular connection, the Verizon stores. And so I was bivocational and kind of juggled both of those until about a year and a half ago, when we recognized, you know, we're going to write this book and launch this business and take this business model, this idea of the culture of good as being more than a theory or philosophy, but really create a model around it that's replicable for other companies that can do the same. And so went full time in it a year and a half ago, and it's just been nonstop ever since. And so yeah, so at first it was a really interesting thing, because I would go from the nonprofit world where I had was trying to scrape together enough money to buy 800 backpacks for kids in our small little town, to coming into the for-profit world where he was like, within months of hiring me, he was like, do you have any ideas on how to launch any movements? And I was like, why don't we take the backpack giveaway that I've been doing with my church and just with a handful of people for the last 10 years, like, let's bring that into the business. And he's like, well, how many backpacks do we need? I said, I have no idea. Like this whole going into business and working with over 2,000 people, I didn't know what in the hell I was doing. I had no idea. It was all completely brand new to me, man. Right. I didn't scale up. I didn't know how to communicate. I did nothing. And but I said, let's do the backpack giveaway. And he said, let's do this. Let's do 60,000 backpacks.
Whoa.
Like that, no big deal, he's going to take a couple months marketing budget, shift it over to backpacks, buying backpacks, inspire his employees. So that was a weird, living in two worlds at the same time, that that dichotomy of not having much resource at all in the nonprofit world and having a lot of resource in the for-profit world. Was really a interesting way to live and lead for a few years. So I learned a lot through that. I learned a lot about the power of profit and the power of, how profit does not have to be evil. It can be good. I learned that business can be a force for good, and that for-profit companies can have a heart and have a soul. And when they do, their employees can bring their soul to work as well. And it could be a really amazing thing. So I started seeing employees' lives transformed. I was getting messages I'd been working in the nonprofit world with people that have been doing that for years, just took it for granted at that point. Now I come into the for-profit world, and you've got employees that these are life-defining moments for them. When you give away a backpack to a child and the mom standing in front of you and tears are coming down her face because they didn't know how they were going to make it, that year, because the dad lost his job or whatever it was. Those were moments for the employees that you can't go to a conference and learn about employee engagement anywhere near what remotely compares to something like that. I mean, that's engaging people on a soul level, and that is life transforming. And so I saw all these people's lives transformed, and that's what motivated me and inspired me to keep going for it.
Yeah. And, it's a very interesting story. It didn't come up as a business idea. It came up basically as a position idea, right? You created your own opportunity as an employee, but you saw the need, you saw not only the opportunity, but the end result, right? Because sometimes the end result is much more important than the opportunity itself, right? Because you're talking about a lot of people that were changing their lives. They're finding their meaning. They were finding, basically connecting to between themselves again. So, I think that's very important to always keep in mind, because sometimes when we go on business, it's one of those things that we just forget. We focus on the profit and we forget about people and we forget about the soul.
Yeah, I think being a pastor and being in that world gave me a different perspective. I mean, I don't want to bring the conversation to a sad point, but I've done a lot of funerals, and I'm a young guy, but I've done a lot of funerals. I've never had anyone get up on the microphone and talk about the deceased, about what kind of car they drove or how big of a house they built, or how much money they had in the bank account. Like everything that we seem to live for in this world, in the end, really doesn't matter. What matters is, what people say about us. In the end, that's our legacy, right? Like, he cared for me. He was there for me when I needed him. He was, he always answered the phone when I needed someone to talk to. He went out of his way to spend time with me when I was going through this difficult time. That's the kind of stuff that ultimately matters in life. It's the good that we do. So I say to the employees and people all the time, the life you live is the legacy you leave. Like, all of us are going to leave a legacy, good or bad, whatever it is. But if we want to live a legacy that matters, we have to do things that matter. And that's something that, I really felt inspired by myself. Like, I saw people's lives really transformed in ways that it was just undeniable, so to give people that opportunity, and what we call through the culture of good, what we say all the time is just giving your employees permission to care. It's one of the promises we make as a culture of good, and culture of good companies make, is we're going to care for people. We're going to care about our customers, care about the community. We're going to care about the world. We're just going to be caring people. And like you said, like in business, sometimes you just lose sight of it a little bit. You just kind of forget the stuff that matters, because you get caught up in the day to day, and that's the what. And we need to have that, right? We need to have successful businesses and companies so that we can do more good in the world. And so we teach we have 5 promises through the culture of good, but 2 of them that are really strong are care and drive the business so we can do more good. And so we honor the fact that business has to be successful in order to do more good in the world. But that's the end, like you're talking about, the end game, the end result of driving the business is, if our business is successful, we can do even greater good in the world. And that really inspires employees to drive the business themselves and make that promise themselves, because they know my everyday work has meaning, because the end result of it is we give away back. Like this year, we gave away 170,000 backpacks with school supply. That happened this past weekend, man. Like, so the employees know that every phone sold, they people don't grow up thinking they want to sling, Samsung and Apple phones like that. That's not your life purpose. But if you can connect your everyday work with the end result of good taking place, you're gonna bring your best self to work every day, and that drives the business. So it's good for business, it's good for the world, it's good for the employees, the customers. It's just good for everybody. It makes us all better, and it's just a better way of doing business and doing life. So yeah, it's really fascinating, man, to see how it's like everything I did before works in this world too.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like a good combo, and sounds like you figured out how to mix them and how to create this evolution between both. And it's super exciting to hear that. And now that, how was that transition? So you got the position with Scott at his company, and then you basically decided, okay, let's turn this replicable a system and make it a business, right? How was that transition emotionally for you to go from, again, nonprofit and employee to now founder of a company? How was that transition like?
I love transition, man. I love change. I'm an idea person. I can't say that I love being stable in a long term, like this is what I'm doing for the next 20 years, like the transition's been great, man. I mean, obviously it's a learning process. You know, I've learned a lot about what the culture of good started as, needed to evolve into something not different. The heart of it and the soul of it's the same, but the process of how we can replicate this into other businesses. My idea of the culture of good had to shift, and I had to learn a lot in terms of how do we make this a model that can be repeated over and over and scaled up through other companies. Like so it's a complete learning curve for me, man. I mean, I've grown so much in the last year and a half, just from Scott and I writing the book and not knowing truly what made the culture of good special. We knew we had a secret sauce, you know, like there was like, somehow we put all these ingredients together and like made this amazing sauce, but we didn't remember what we had put into it to really like make it this right, you know? So we went back through and we had organizational psychologists comb through TCC with hundreds of interviews and countless hours of interviews and phone calls and conversations and surveys and like, you know, what worked, you know, what was the ingredients of the secret sauce and why did it work? And what were the behaviors and beliefs of the employees and why they bought into it so quick? And, you know, what kind of got over the obstacles of skepticism. And, you know, this is just, you know, sometimes you go out to do good as a company and people think, oh, it's just a PR effort or it's just for marketing. Like, why did it work so well? And honestly, if you would have asked Scott a year and a half ago to Scott and I, we would have had a hard time telling you why it worked. But over the process of writing the book and then, you know, building the model of the culture of good, we identified there's observable behaviors and beliefs in the employees that are undeniable across every layer of leadership. We're in 42 states now, over 3,000 employees. It's just, we started seeing patterns of dimensions of leaders and teams and the organization as a whole that we're like, okay, now we can build a model off of this. And all of that is so brand new to me, man. You know, again, I was a pastor in a small church in a small town, dude. I had a little bit of college, but never had full college and never went for 4 years. I don't have a business degree, any of that stuff. This has just been like, you know, this has been me, like you're talking about, recognizing the opportunity and taking it, you know, taking it. You know, if you're scared, embarking on something new, then you just do it scared. And if you don't know what you're doing, you fake it till you make it. And you act confident. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Act confident. People that act confident are more believable. And in the times where I didn't know what in the hell I was talking about, I just acted confident, you know? My shoulders were back, my head was high, and I went into every situation and scenario that I've been in, you know, ready to rock it as much as I could, and believing that ultimately, you know, this isn't about me running a company. This is about making the world a better place. And so I believe in it so much that, you know, I'm willing to the transition from, you know, working at TCC to now doing this. You know, I'm just excited to be 41 years old and still have something in front of me where I have to learn all over again. It's all brand new to me. That to me is exciting, man.
It does sound exciting. And through all the process that you guys were trying to figure out you had the secret sauce, but you kind of did not, you know, you lost the ingredients. You were trying to recreate it, basically, see what was the secret thing inside the sauce, you know, you're trying to figure it out. And then at the same time, you wanted to make it a business, right? So you were like struggling in between. How was that like? I mean, did you doubt yourself that you could turn this into a business, or what was crossing your mind back then?
Oh yeah. I mean, we doubted ourselves after the book was published, man. I mean, you know, there's always that. It's like you do it scared and you do it doubting. You know, you just do it. You know, we, like I said, brought in organizational psychologists and hired some staff that are kind of in the space of thought leaders on how to take ideas and businesses and books to mass market. And a lot of that process was, all right, if we take all these surveys and the book and all these conversations and interviews, and if we sit down and we start to look and find patterns, and if we can find those patterns, then we can start to boil it down and find what ingredients are there. And from finding 5 different dimensions of the culture of good is where we get our 5 promises from. And those 5 promises create a model that now is very manageable. So you can manage to it, you can measure it, which is really unique. If you do any study on culture, organizational culture, there's stuff out there, but in terms of having a real solid system and model that you can measure the culture of your company and manage to that and keep measuring to it, this is fairly new, a new concept, and because culture seems very elusive and kind of out there and organic, and we're making the case that the culture of good is an end game. That's an end result of companies keeping to their promises, right? Making sure that they still have a soul, because one of the risks of growing your business and growing your company is, early on, something makes you special, right? You're meeting a need, you're family friendly, you're like a family, the culture's, real inclusive and connected. And yeah, as you grow, you start to put in rules, and, the systems are in place. And so as a company grows, it can lose what made it special in the first place. And culture is something that if you can keep your finger on the culture of your company as your company grows and as it expands and builds, then you can keep what makes you special, because that's really what makes companies special, is their culture, man. I mean, that's why employees want to work for you. That's why they want to keep working for you. That's why customers want to do business with you. It's because something about you makes something about you gives them a good feeling. There's something special about you, and that's what we want to bring out in companies and make sure that they stay true to who they are and why they're in business.
Cool. So through all the uncertainty and all, you had the doubts, you had the fear, and you and Scott, even after launching the book, you were trying to basically fake it till you make it, right? How were those first 6 months of the business? How was that emotional wreckness for you guys?
Yeah, there was a lot. It was a roller coaster, man. I mean, it was a lot of doubting each other and doubting the system, and struggling through a lot of the frustration that was felt. Was just like, it's like anything else when you're trying to do something, but you don't know what you need to do in order to do it. Like, it was like confusing and unsettling at points, because like I stated, like, it's just not knowing what we were really looking for. We knew what had happened. We didn't know how to articulate it. We didn't know how to share that. We had people come in and say, well, what's your secret sauce? And it's not like KFC where they've hidden it. Like, we didn't even know what it was, we didn't, we and so there was a lot of frustrating moments, banging our heads on the wall, trying to work through this process. And, it's an evolution. It took some time to really figure it out. And there were moments where we're like, okay, we got it. And then a few weeks later, we're like, no, it wasn't that, and then looking back over what didn't work, we knew there were things that we had done early on that just didn't work. And one of them was what I was talking about, like, teaching employees how to drive the business through the culture of good, how to connect their everyday work to how it would do greater good in the world, and driving the business. So, really the culture of good initially connected with people on an emotional level, because it was, philanthropic and doing good and caring about the world. But then you end up with a bunch of, Mother Teresa's out there, like wanting to change the world and do good. But they started, we even had some employees that would show up late to work because they were out the night before doing good, and they used the culture of good as a crutch for why they were showing up to work late,
Right.
We realized early on, like we have to really build this in as the DNA of the company, and these products and tools that we're building, it needs to live at TCC first. Like TCC needs to be, the example, the model of what a culture of good company is before it can be introduced to other companies and businesses. And so we've been building tools and products and launching them at TCC and growing it, making sure that what we believe we got a hold of really is what other companies need. And now through all the frustration and Scott looking at me like, dude, I have no idea why this worked. And me looking back and saying, I don't either, man. Like, we start, it's wild, man. It's wild. Cause I don't know that anyone starts with an idea. And then they have all the resource and all the understanding on how to make it. You start from a place of not knowing, and you start teaching yourself and growing and educating yourself and doing your homework and putting in the time and effort, blood, sweat, and tears, and figuring it out. But it was a lot of hard work, man. A lot of long hours trying to sort through it all, for sure.
And through all the struggles and stuff, I mean, those really rough days, did you guys just ever thought about quitting, and it's like, okay, no, we can't do this, it's not replicable, or we succeeded here with the company, but I don't think we're going to be able to turn it into a business? Were those ideas flowing in your mind at any time?
Yeah. I mean, were they, or are they now? Does that ever end? You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Like we know it worked at TCC, and we're introducing it to other companies right now, but and it seems to be working, and it seems to be engaging employees, but we're still learning. Like we want to bring the best model out into the marketplace that we can, and we want to bring the best products and tools. And there's times Scott and I look at each other like, did we get it? Did we get it right? I don't know that the doubts ever end. I don't know. You just don't give yourself an option to quit,
Yes, absolutely.
I guess if you feel called to do something, if you quit doing it, you have to question whether you ever really knew you were called to do it in the first place. You just stick with it, man. I think that's what it really takes in business and life and raising kids and marriage and everything else, man. You just got to go through those difficult times and those frustrating moments, man, and learn from it and become a better person and bring your best self into that. Whatever you're building that day, you bring your best self into it, man. And that yeah, for sure though. For sure. The answer to your question, yeah, we have doubted. There's moments that we still question from time to time certain things. We don't question the model or, whether it will work. But there's always going to be, other things to learn and grow and expand on and that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't think the frustration ever ends. Now the frustration's more, let's really finalize all the productization and tools and stuff that we're building, and let's get this out into the marketplace on another level. So we're about to kick off a huge social marketing campaign. If you follow Scott or I on anything social media, you're going to get really sick of hearing from us, man, because we're about to blast it out. We're about to blast.
Well, I want to see that in action, so I'll definitely go look for both of you and follow you everywhere.
Yeah.
and see what the blast is all about.
So we've got myself, and then Scott, and then the Culture of Good is a brand itself. So everything Culture of Good on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that, man. I mean, it's just about to, you know, we did a soft launch, and now we're in 3 different types of companies. We're in the large retailer, TCC, where we've really tested out and kind of incubated this product and this model, and made sure that it worked. And we're in a franchise model, which is really interesting because we have different owners over different stores, and we have that, and then and we're launching in a small startup as well. So we've got some unique spaces that we're really testing it out. And August 1st we go gangbusters, man. Yeah, it goes nuts. So you're hitting it at the right time, brother.
I love it, man. I love it. And I'll make sure also to link to, to link to the page of the Culture of Good, and to your profile too at thehustleshow.co/THS15. So everybody that is listening in a podcast or watching this on our YouTube channel, just go there. We'll have the link so they can connect with you and see that blast that you're talking about. We want to see the explosion.
Oh God. Yeah. Hopefully it's not like a firework,
Right. It's all fun. I mean, it's
like that for some people, but it's been building for a long time. So we're 5 years into building this thing, and we're now ready to really see it take off. And ultimately I want to see companies all over the globe be a part of this, man. I mean, I want to see a movement. Much like you would see with like conscious capitalism or something like that. I want to see Culture of Good companies make promises to their employees and promises to their customers and the communities that they serve. Like, make these promises, to care, to drive the business so you can do more good, to connect, to inspire, and be authentic. Those are 5 promises that we want every company that we can connect with to make to their, like I said, their employees or customers and their communities where they serve and they do business. And I think when that happens, it's just going to make the world a better place, man. So ultimately we want to see this movement grow, not for the sake of the Culture of Good as a business, but for the sake of the fact that, there's 170,000 kids that got backpacks this year, and that's great. But in a few years, it'd be awesome to have 1 million. We've given 700,000 backpacks to date with school supplies, and we have nursing home kits and veteran stuff, and we've got all the philanthropic stuff. I'd love to see millions of kids and millions of elderly in the nursing homes, and I want to get to the place where millions of lives are affected on a weekly basis, because we have so many for-profit businesses and all their employees are actively involved in caring and driving the business and inspiring others, connecting and being authentic. So that's my dream, man.
I love it, man. And it's a very interesting goal and vision what you have. And it looks like you've come a long way. You've had your journey, you have your struggles, ups and downs, and you're definitely not because that's one of the myths that I try to bust with the show. Success is not overnight, and it's not going to happen in 24 hours, right? And we're talking about this product developing over the last 5 years, and it didn't turn into a business until a year and a half. So
it wasn't even really a full business until recently. I mean, the productization and stuff is just now being utilized by 3 different companies. So this is 5 years in the making, on top of over 20 years of my own personal life worked in the nonprofit.
Right.
I went full time I graduated high school when I was 16 years old, moved to Brooklyn, New York in 1993, and went full time into nonprofit work. And that, never went to college. Like I said, I just, didn't want to waste any time. I thought, what am I going to do? Sit in a classroom and have a professor teach me how to make the world a better place? Like, that's all I knew I wanted to do. So I just went for that, and so it's, and my wife and I started our church with 4 people in our house, and grew it to several hundred people over 17 years. You know, the backpack giveaway was 10 years old before it became 60,000 backpacks that first year at TCC. It doesn't happen overnight. In any book, video that says otherwise is BS, man. You know, there's always more to the story, you know, and that's what I want to hear. I want to hear the struggle and the frustrations of waking up and not knowing, you know, how you were going to get to the next week, you know. And my wife and I lived that, you know, doing good. We built a school and a church in Zambia, Africa, that we had been building for over 10 years. We bought land over 10 years ago, and it just started having kids this year in January, you know. But that's taken over 10 years, man, you know, and I've wanted to quit several times. I sent money over there to keep building that project over there when we didn't have money here, you know. And that's scary, man. It's really scary to do. And we started an after school program that's now become a network that started in our small town for kids that after school had nowhere to go, and it was right in their neighborhood, you know. And that's since grown to Pontiac, Michigan, and Detroit, Michigan. And so it just, yeah, it takes time, and it takes doing things when you don't see any results, man. When you don't see any good come out of it, you just keep doing it because you know you're supposed to. You know, it's almost like taking a should to a must, you know, like instead of saying this is what I should do with my life, saying this is what I must do. And when it becomes a must, then, you know, you just keep doing it. Even when you wake up and you go through the day and you go back to sleep frustrated, you wake up the next day and you keep at it. And that's really the success in anything in life. If you're measuring success correctly, is going to take some time.
I love that. You know, that's exactly what the show is all about. And, you know, I'm so happy that we connected, man, that we can share your story so that people can hear, you know, there is a light after the tunnel, and there is another way to see things when you're on the other side of the fence, but it's just going to take time, and it's going to take some hustle, and just got to hanging there and keep pushing until you make it.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I always talk about hustling, man. I appreciate the name of your show. You just got to keep hustling, you know. Use what you got till you get what you want. You know, we said that all the time, my wife and I, like, use what you got till you get what you want. That's part of hustling, you know. Fake it till you make it. That's part of hustling, you know, making the most of every opportunity and you know, just not quitting, not giving up. You know, there's any story of success, whether it be in business or life or anything, man. I mean, it's packed full of struggle. It's packed full of failure. It's packed full of, you know, fear and doing things scared. And all of us have those stories. And I think it's really important to share those because, you know, it's not good. It's not good to be in a perspective where you see other people's success and not realize what it took to get there. Because then you start feeling entitled to something that you didn't work for. But if you find success, you'll also find someone who sacrificed a lot to get it, you know, and that's right. That sacrifice is really what I think having a sense of self-leadership and a strong sense of how to lead others comes down to your sacrifice, man. Your measure of leadership is your measure of sacrifice. And if you're willing to sacrifice now and continue to sacrifice until you reap the reward of whatever you're doing, you know, I don't see anyone as being limited, man. I think we're without limits. The only limit we have is how we limit ourselves, you know. And if we're willing to sacrifice for what we want and keep at it, man, we'll reap the reward of it. And I'm fortunate to wake up every day and be a part of that part of it too, which is really, man, I just feel blessed, dude. I feel like there's been a lot of sacrifice, but I recognize that, you know, I'm really fortunate to be in a place I could live out what I love doing every single day, get paid for it, and yet at the end of the day, I put my head on a pillow and know that I did something that mattered, you know. And that ultimately for me is what I want my legacy to be.
I think that's cool, man. And I really appreciate it, sharing with us today everything that you've been through, the story and the behind the scenes of the culture of good, but not only that, the behind the scenes of Ryan. And kudos to you. I really, I'm very proud of everything you've done. I know you guys, and what you're doing. You're headed to success, and I know it's gonna explode for you guys. So, keep hustling, keep doing what you're doing, because I know you're gonna change thousands and thousands of lives. And it's an honor to have you here, man. I'm really proud that we get the chance to connect and to share your story. And I'm just excited to see you explode.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys and what you're doing at the Hustle Show, and sharing those stories. Like I said, beyond the success, sharing the struggle. That's what connects us, man. If I got on here and talked about all my successes, there would be not a whole lot of connection to our success. But when we talk about our own pain and personal struggle, that's what reminds us to be human, and that we all are. And even when we're in for-profit business and making lots of money and doing whatever we do, or building business or whatever it is, man, that we're human beings, and our customers are humans, our employees are humans, and our community needs us, man. And we need to lean our success into the world and do something amazing with it. So I appreciate you guys as well. And your voice of making that happen is awesome, dude.
Thank you, man. And, last thing before we, moved on to the end, I do, I know we're kind of close to our time here, but I don't want to miss the opportunity to play the hustle round with you, where it's basically where I throw a word at you, and whatever one word that comes to mind, just say it out loud. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to play with you.
So what's going to happen? You're just going to throw a word at me and I'm going to say another word?
Yes.
Okay.
So whatever first word comes to your mind.
Oh God.
That was
a little scary, man. Like, what are the boundaries for me, dude? I was a pastor before, but I'm not anymore.
There's no boundaries, man. This is not live, so we can always edit. So there's absolutely no boundaries.
Awesome. All right. Cool.
Here we go. Hustle.
Strength.
Work.
Tired.
Employee.
Happy.
Boss.
I just saw a picture of a fat guy in my head. I don't know why.
No, it works.
There's boss. I think of authority.
Okay. Rules.
Restrictive.
College.
Party.
For sure. Fear.
Fear. That's a good one. I actually just went darkness.
Weakness.
A word that comes to mind with weakness. I'm a very visual person, so I just went to slunched over.
Okay, that works.
Yeah.
Strength.
Hustle.
Yes. Okay. Motivation.
Motivation. Power.
And last but not least, books.
First thing that came to mind was education, man. It's funny that you bring up books, because I've just got into reading about quantum physics and stuff, man. I have not been interested in anything scientific at all. And all of a sudden I've just been fascinated. I think books more, I think the word that, and originally it's education, but the second thing that comes to mind is fascination. And I'm reading books more now that will fascinate me, which means I'm reading stuff that I know nothing about.
That's good. That's good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Like just stuff that's mind blowing that kind of trips me out. That's the kind of stuff that I've just wanted to be fascinated recently. And I've been using books to do that. So yeah.
Cool. So is there, to all the hustlers that are listening to us right now, is there a hustling quote that you would say to them to get them, motivate them to take action? Maybe they're on the fence, they're at their job, they're on the fence trying to decide if they quit or not, go on their business, or maybe they already started a business, but they're not there yet. What would you say to them to motivate them to keep pushing and to keep going?
Yeah, I think the quote that inspires me every single day is I'll give you a couple quotes. Two of them aren't mine, but one of them, is the quote about the two most significant days in a person's life is the day they're born and the day they discover why they were born. And that really for me is like discovering why you're born leads me to the next quote. And that's a mentor of mine, Pastor Bill Wilson out of Brooklyn, New York, when I was 16. He's got this real raspy Godfather voice, and he'd always point his finger in my face because like he always joked about young people not being having life experience and thinking they know it all, and like and they all want to know what is my purpose in life. And he would always look at me and point his finger in my face, and he'd say, Ryan, the need is the call. Like the need is the call. Like your life calling and purpose is about just discovering needs. And I think if you're a business owner and you're frustrated, like look around and start meeting people's needs, and you'll discover a greater sense of calling and purpose and why you do what you do and the reason you were born in the first place, man. And once you find that, all the fear and, all the struggle that you're going to face, man, your why becomes bigger than that. So that's what I would say, man. And then lastly, just live with the end in mind. We're gonna leave a legacy. Live knowing that everything that you work for isn't for the next week or the next quarter. It's for, your life legacy, and live for that. So that would be my advice, man.
Awesome, and I love it. Thanks so much for sharing those. And before we leave, is there any way that people can connect with you and get in touch with you and Culture of Good? Anywhere they can go?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we're on all the social media. Like I said, Culture of Good on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also go on cultureofgood.com. So the website, cultureofgood.com. And then they can reach out to me on email at Ryan, RYAN, at cultureofgood.com.
Sounds like a plan. And like I said, we'll link everything in the show notes to make sure that people can find you guys. And if they want to bring this into their business, if they already have a business, I think this is amazing what you guys are doing. So I would definitely suggest hustlers, if you're running a business already, start since the beginning, building this culture in your company and start doing it right, like you guys.
Thanks, brother.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, man, for your time. And, you shared some amazing insights and some really cool stuff. And, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And I'm excited to go and follow you and stalk you on social media and see the explosion happen.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it. And all your viewers, keep listening to the Hustle Show. Keep hustling.
So there you have it. I'm very grateful to have had Ryan McCarthy from Culture of Good today. It was an amazing episode. If you check how long this episode was, it was in fact a little bit longer than usual because it was so good and we were so into it and we were both so connected. We felt so connected and Ryan is an amazing person and we just had to keep going and I'm sorry, Ryan, we did go a little bit over your time that you had scheduled for the show, but I really, really resonate with his story and with his purpose. And I just couldn't wait to share this with you. So I'm super excited that you were here today at the Hustle Show. And I truly hope that you join us on Monday for another episode of the Hustle Show, as we will have another amazing story to share with you that is going to inspire you to go after your dreams and to keep pushing and keep hustling until you make it. All right, keep hustling.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in to the Hustle Show audio experience. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And even if you didn't, make sure you subscribe to the podcast right now. It's still free. Visit thehustleshow.co for all the show notes and to watch the video experience of this episode. We'll see you soon.